Hey guys, welcome to another video, and today I'm going to take you through the mixing of Bad Guy by Billie Eilish. Stick around to find out what I've done to this track. Okay, so some of you might not know this. I have this channel here which is full of tutorials, a lot of guitar stuff, and also music production. And from time to time I will go in and talk about some production that I've done and tell you about the trials and tribulations. One of the interesting things that I'm going to tell you about today is the mixing of a track cover that I've recently done. I have two YouTube channels. The channel that you're on now, which is why I have all the tutorials and the lessons. And I also have what I would call a performance channel, which goes under the name of Charlie Diamond, and I'll put a link to that below. Now, what I'm doing on the other channel is music videos. You can think MTV. It's where I record a cover track, usually in a funk style, and then I'll create a video for that track as well. And it's so much fun. It's like brilliant fun. It's one of the things I started to do during lockdown when gigs dried up. And it allows me to be creative and have an outlet for my music. So I'll put a link to that channel down below. Please do subscribe to that. I think you'll like it. It's a lot of fun. It's hilarious. It's very different to this channel. It really is just music videos where I'm playing all the instruments and I'm doing all the camera work and stuff. So that's another side project, which I might even do some tutorials on at some point as well. Okay, so today we're going to concentrate on the cover of Billie Eilish Bad Guy. All right, so if we go straight into my digital audio workstation here, I use Reaper, but what I'll take you through today is nothing really to do with the software itself. I'm going to talk about signal flow and, more to the point, kind of like the process that I go through when I create tracks. I'm kind of fresh to this audio production thing again. I did a lot of this in my teens and my 20s and early 30s, like heaps and heaps. Worked a lot in the industry in that area. And then I had a long break for whatever reason, mainly because of business needs. And I sort of drifted away from it. But I'm fully back on it now. And it's all coming back. Having said that, there's lots of things I am learning along the way. And that's what I really love. And you know, guys, like, it's all about process for me. I love the finished product, both the track, and I also love the finished video, which I really do encourage you to check out. I love those things, but I also really enjoy, and I think I enjoy more the actual process of putting it all together. So from a blank canvas to a finished product, that whole process I find that really, it really suits my personality. It's troubleshooting, it's overcoming obstacles, towards finding the sound that I want. Okay, so let's dive in. I've got my digital audio workstation here. Now, the interesting thing about this is, if I just sort of scroll down a bit, you can see I ended up using like almost 70 tracks. Now, if you listen to the cover that I've done, just follow that link. It's probably worth doing that first so you know what I'm talking about. It sounds actually quite sparse and quite minimal. And I think that's kind of a testament to a mix that I'm really quite fond of. Now, whereas it does sound quite minimal, there's actually an awful lot going on there. So I'll try and break down some of the elements that I've done in this mix. So the way I started this mix was to, first of all, I took the original MP3, the Billie Eilish Bad Guy MP3, and I stuck it on a track and I tempo mapped it. Now, the reason I did that is because the start section, this sort of first area here, is at a different tempo to the outro. The outro here, if I just sort of scroll down, there's a chunk of instrumentation down here at the end of the track, which is a different tempo. And you can see I've tempo mapped that at the top here. So the bulk of the track is in 135 BPM. You can see up here, 135 BPM. I've got a tempo map here. But then when it goes to the end of the track up here, you can see we jump down to 120 BPM. So there's a tempo change. Now, that was important to do, first of all, because obviously I wanted to make sure I programmed everything in time. And I also wanted to make sure I had the gap between the end of the track to that kind of outro piece perfectly in time. Now, the reason I started that way, and I put the track in, the original track in, was that it just enables me to quickly get an arrangement in there without even thinking about it. I can tell there's a chorus here, there's a verse here, there's a mid-late here, and there's an instrumentation section or whatever. Okay, so let's break it down. What I'll take off here, I've got my master. I'll take the effects off the master because I want to do that a bit later. So I'll just break down this mix by sort of groups of instruments, I think, to begin with. I think we'll start with the drums. So if I just put this back here and I solo the drums. Right, there we go. All right, so what we'll do is we'll start with the drums. So if I just click the solo the drum subgroup. So what I've done, just to explain this, I find it easy to put, or easier to work, if I put groups of instrumentations into separate groups, or buses if you like. And there's a couple of reasons I do that. One of the reasons is that it organizes things so it's easy for me to work with, and I can visualize easier. So there's just the drum section you see here. There's just the basses. Down here we've got the vocals, other vocals here, guitars, outros, etc. And you see what I can do is I can just condense these down, and it gives me an easier view of what I'm looking at. So I'll just condense these down. You can see these are all groups. All right. So anyway, we'll start with the drum. So that's one of the reasons I do the groupings. The other reason I do the groupings and put them into sort of folders, if you like, or subgroups, is that I can then process each group of instruments on their own merit, right? So I can put compression on, say, the drums, or I can put a compression just on the bass, or I could treat all of the vocals as one. And then also when it comes to mixing, I can just turn up one fader and affect all of the instrumentations and all of the channels in that subgroup. So that's why I do that. And you'll see some of the things that I've done as I go through this. So let's just start with the drums. I've just got the drum folder soloed here. Hopefully you should be hearing that. So this is quite a simple drum track here. You can see I've got this 707 kick drum. And then a little bit later on, we're coming in with this tambourine stroke hi-hat. And when we get to the chorus section, there's a snare that comes in. So all quite straightforward stuff. Now, what you'll see here is I've actually mixed down these drum tracks. These drum tracks are actually MIDI parts that I programmed in. Most of the sounds you will hear are from native instruments programmed in. But what I've found is that there's a couple of things I've found, actually. So many things I've found is that it's quite a good practice, I find, once you're getting towards your final mix and you're happy with the sound, like I was happy with this kick drum sound, I'm happy with the snare drum sound. I then rendered it. So I created an audio file of that MIDI instrument, if you like. And what I found is that sometimes there could be a slight timing discrepancy between what the MIDI information, where the MIDI information falls, and then the actual audio file. So when it renders out, I can notice there's a little timing error. And sometimes I'll just move this. So if we look, let me just show what I'm talking about here. If I sort of zoom in on this kick drum here, sometimes I'll find this is just slightly displaced in the on the timeline. Now, and it's not displaced so much that you can notice it, because you'd have to hear I think the ear starts registering a secondary note from about 50 milliseconds. So it'd have to be a considerable sort of timing issue. But one of the things you've got to be careful of is if you do have slight variations in where these hits fall on the grid, you can get into sort of phase problems if you have the same source on different tracks, and it can create some phase issues which starts muddying up the mix. So that's one of the reasons that I tend to render these things down and just check the timing, and you can see these are sort of bang on the beat. There's like a few samples here between the start of that bar and then when this kick drum comes in, but that's enough, right? And it's sort of pretty much perfectly in tune with the rest of them, or in line with the rest of them. So that's the drum the drum group. And you can see it's pretty basic stuff. It's just a kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat. I think there's a tambourine that comes in for the instrumental bit. Basic tambourine there. All the rest is just straightforward. So if we just solo, let's just take this back and solo this. That's the nice kick drum sound. As I said, I used Native Instruments, and it's sort of emulating a 707 snare kick drum. And the snare. Now, interestingly enough, that snare sound this is, you can see, this is kind of interesting. If I just sort of highlight this section here, put this into loop, what I found was I wanted to go for a low end snare, kind of a fat, deep, not like a pingy snare. I really don't like pingy snares that go ding, 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 that kind of ring. I'm not really keen on that at all, you know. Excuse me. So I want to go for that deep snare, which I've got. You can hear it's got a little bit of like kind of tambourine mixed in with the sound. However, what I also did was put in this, if I solo this channel 2, it just puts in that room sound, right? I've got that hi-hat and that kind of room snare sound coming in on the top here, which is rendered here. So what I used for that was just, like I said, back into Native Instruments. If I just pull this window over here, I've got a Contact 5 instance of drums loaded here. And this is an Abbey Road 70s drummer. I often always fall back to the Abbey Road 70s drummer. I just like the sound of the 70s. And everything that was going on sonically in the 70s. I think it was a great era of music. And you can see I've got everything muted on the drum kit apart from the snare and the hi-hat. I've even muted out the overhead and the room sounds here on this instrument. And I did quite a bit of tweaking with EQ. I put some compression on that particular one. So normally this would be a drum kit which is, you know, you'd hear an awful lot going on, but I've just soloed out pretty much just the snare and the hi-hat. And when you listen to it in context here, it adds to the kick drum, which is from a different instrument. I think I used battery actually, and also different from the snare drum, but it just adds in a nice bit of room and gives it a bit of kind of a drummer's authenticity. Nice. And that's pretty much it for the drums. I think might be a swoosh here. Yeah, so I included that. That's just like a swoosh to bring in and emphasize the last kind of, or one of the choruses towards the end of the tune. So those are the drums. Pretty straightforward. Now, one thing I don't always do is I'll just de-solo these, and we'll get. You can hear the track coming through there. I'll get to that shortly. Now, if I just open up the bass guitars and go back to the start of the tune here and play the bass guitars, I'll just solo these. A couple of sounds I used here. One of these sounds is, again, Native Instruments, and I think I use the Native Instruments J bass sound, which is this one. Quite straightforward bass line, but I used a lot of EQ on that to give it some depth. You know, one of the things I find is that you get in a really punchy tight bass sound can be a challenge sometimes for a lot of mix engineers, a lot of producers. So I really spent a lot of time on getting the right sound there, EQing certain elements out. What you won't, it depends on what you're listening to, whether you've got headphones on or what are you listening, how you're listening to this, will depend on whether you can hear this secondary bass here. I'll just solo this out. This is a sub bass. Now, if you looked at the meters, let me just switch the view so you can see the meters here, you can see there's quite a chunky signal level here. But unless you've got a decent set of headphones or you've got like a sub or something, you're not going to hear too much of that. But when you put them together and you turn up, it's a kicking ass bass sound. Let's just solo it. So you've got both of them. And if I take away the sub and bring it in, you know, it just gives it this whole kind of depth which you don't get without the sub. So I've started to use that sort of sub technique quite a bit, and literally it is just a case of duplicating the bass part to another track and then assigning that track to a different sound. And I think for that particular sub sound, I used something out of, I can't remember. I think it was the instrument called Absinthe, I think, which is a great synth. I mean, it's fantastic. And I think that's the sub line. Again, you're not going to hear that too well unless you've got it cranked up. But you know, when you start cranking that one up and you play that in the car or put it on your decent sound system, it really kicks some ass. So that's a good technique to do, is to put the sub in. When we get to the chorus, an extra line comes in, which is a clav bass. I'll just solo it on its own. And again, it's just a duplicate of the bass part. So if I now play all those three together, that really, you know, really kicks in the low end for the chorus. In terms of what I use for effects here, I've just slapped a quite a simple compressor on the basses. Incidentally, all of those individual bass tracks, so you know, the J bass, the synth bass, which is a sub bass, and also that clavinet type of bass, each one of those had compression as well. So I've put compression on each one of those channels. More of a compression which has got a quick release, quick attack. So just to lower any of those sort of big transients, just sort of get them down. And then on top of this bus where all the basses are, I've put this compression with a little slightly longer release and slower attack. So it's not acting so quickly, it's just acting in an elongated way. And that's the basis. If we just put that into context with the drums now. Nice. Intro. And chorus. What I was really careful of in this song, you know, this actual song is really kind of, if you listen to the original of this, the bass is really important, right? So when I do some of these covers, sometimes I'll do a cover which changes the song completely, right? And I'll make the instrumentation really different. I'll make the whole tonality really different. This one, that bass part is so integral to the song that it kind of had to be not the same, but kind of make you aware that it's really similar, right? Because that's such an important part of the song. So that I usually pull out those bits and try to emulate them as closely as possible. So this is kind of close. It is different, but it's still meaty and thick. And I also ensured that bass guitar was not conflicting with the kick drum. You know, so like when I chose the kick drum sound, I chose a sound which was not too subby. If we just go back to that kick drum and I just solo the kick drum again, you'll see it's not too much sub in that. But if I put the sub on of the bass, you know, they're not getting in the way of each other, right? You know, the bass is like kind of down here, and that kick drum is more kind of up here in the, you know, in kind of pitch, right? So and that's one of the things, you know, that I'm really cautious of trying to do is to carve a frequency space for each instrument, you know, and just put them where they should be. So that I spent quite a bit of time on doing that, but it paid off, I think. So they're in their own space. Let's just go back and solo those two. And I love that, that kind of clavy, almost honky, low-end clav thing. It gives that real funky, filthy, dirty, you know, 70s. Which the original doesn't have. And I think that gave it quite a bit of energy. So if you check out the original track that I've done, there's a lot of energy in it. Okay, so that's the bass and drums. Cool. So then, what else? There's some brass parts down here. Yeah. So this is interesting. The brass parts here, I use brass here rather than the reason I use brass here because again it gives it that kind of disco funk, kind of soul Motowny thing. And the original track here is I think she hums it. Like a do 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 bum bum da 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 dum. I actually used a brass part here for that, which you can see here. That's actually she actually sings that or hums it. Nice, right? Again, native instruments. In fact, I think I didn't render this. I think I've still got the original. So here we go. Here's the brass section here. Not brass section, it's just a trumpet. So here's a trumpet for that I use from Native Instruments, and it's a mute trumpet. Again, you know, what's amazing with all this stuff is you can just really tweak every element of each instrument in this Native Instruments stuff. I'm just blown away by it. Every time I go into it, it just blows my mind, you know, just crazy. Each instrument's got so many parameters that you can frig around with and play with and change. So I EQ'd that out a bit. I put some compression on this, put the tape effect on it. There's a twang effect on it, you know, like some vibrato. So yeah, that was to try to get that kind of sounding authentic to a real trumpet player. So let's just solo that out. I think it sounds pretty authentic. Okay. And that one I've got a reverb as well. So I've got that plug in here, and then I've got this reverb Oril River, which is a reverb here. That's nice. Incidentally, that's a free plugin, I believe. So I was kind of happy with that. Put that into context again, basses and drums. All right, nice. And there's some other bits and bobs when it gets to this. Let me just... Yeah, of course, there's that iconic riff. Again, the original doesn't use brass for that. I decided to put brass in here. And that repeats at the end of the section. You notice that this one's more not so staccato. This one is more staccatoed here. Kind of quite nice, right? Put them in the let's put the bass in and the drums in. Nice, right? Okay. What else was there? I also used some brass in the kind of instrumental section. You know, so what's happening there is, as you hear shortly when I bring in the vocals, those brass elements there, again, they're all native instruments, but they're just pulling out parts of the, or embellishing the sort of vocal parts. Let's just put them in, actually, so you can kind of... Even if you know that you don't own me. You know, they're just... Even if you know that you can kind of hear them left and right here. Even if you know that you don't own me, I'll let you play the role. I'll be your animal. Yeah. So they're just extras, bits and bobs. There's a few of them all over the place. That's kind of the brass, kind of minimal again. Okay, cool. So let's move on. What else did I do before I get to the vocals, which were a lot to talk about with the vocals? There's a few bits and bobs of guitars in here. Let's just open this folder up here. You can see there's quite a few. 12, is it, or more guitar parts. And actually, there's not. It looks like a lot, but they're quite sparse, but they make a lot of difference. The intro parts. All right, so nice. You've got this kind of just an arpeggio coming down the arpeggio, lashings of reverb, and this howled sort of vibrato wah-wah note, and that kind of bend up there. I love that bend. It's almost like a country bend. So really subtle stuff. If you hear it in context, though, it really brings the whole thing, opens the whole track up with the reverb. All right, nice. So that was kind of nice. I like writing those parts. You know, those are nothing to do with the original track. Those are like what I've put in there and wrote for this. Gives it my own flavour. I like that. Then I've got these other parts that come in the chorus here. So here's the chorus. Sorry, not the chorus, the verse. So there's these kind of... You know, like going from the tonic to the seventh up to the third, minor third, I think. Classic sort of funk thing. Again, these are additional parts. You won't find these on the original. These are... This is on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you. Oh, please, I do what I want when I'm... Nice, right? And then in addition to that, I've got a few parts here. What do I have here? I don't remember. Yeah, there's an accent to sort of begin the chorus. Right? That's all it is. And that kind of octave thing here. That's like an octave guitar part I played. Heavily EQ'd. All the bottom end is taken out, and quite a bit of the top end. A lot of compression. Incidentally, that's one of the things I do with a lot of tracks is I'll put on like a filter, a high pass filter on a lot of tracks of these channels to remove all the bottom end, because otherwise you can have all this stuff that doesn't really do anything. It just muddies your mix. So all those are taken out. So if I just unsolo and you listen to that, listen to those octave guitar parts in context of the chorus. Kind of nice, and it just brought the whole track together. It just lifted the track up, gave it that kind of funky thing. And then we got them at the end again. There we go, again with another kind of wah-wah vibrato gritty thing. Oops. So you're a tough guy, like it really rough guy, just can't get enough guy, just a waste of puff guy. There is some additional things here. Yeah, I've got these, there are a few guitar parts actually. They're all quite subtle in the mix. When you listen to it, there's these kind of wah-wah slides. Hear those things, right? Right, nice, yeah? And also, what's coming in here are these... You know those parts that we started with at the beginning of the track here, to bring the track in? Well, I've repeated those in the chorus here. Two of them, left and right. Pound left and right. And that guitar as well. You know, what those do is... I think it helps sort of finalize the mix and the anticipation and the excitement it was building on the last chorus. Well, you know, like what I like to do is to think like that, is to, you know, not throw everything at the start of the song or the intro, but to kind of work towards a crescendo where there's lots of things going on. Sometimes those things reference something that's happened at the start of the song, and that's kind of what I was doing there. Those are the same as the start here. Right? You can kind of hear them, you know, so it's kind of, that's what's going on there. So that's pretty much guitar parts, I think. What were these bits here? Oh yeah. I've got those octave parts there as well. They just accent one of the verses. Kind of that Nile Rodgers funk thing. So that's kind of nice. Alrighty, so I think we're getting towards discussing the vocals, which were kind of epic. What are these strings here? Oh, these were... Yeah, these were like kettlebells. Again, these aren't in the original. These are all additional. You'll hear them. If I unsolo them, you'll hear them in the background. I like it when you take control, even if you know that you don't own me. So they're kind of nice, you know. They just give it sort of a bit of atmosphere during that section. And then, like I said, we got the vocals. Let me just hide these. Now, we've got a few things going on here. I split these down to verse vocals and chorus vocals. And you can see there's a lot of these. Now, I'll tell you the truth. Right? Loads and loads. And look at them. I hacked them to pieces. Right? Now, the reason I've done this is, okay, basically, this tune has, you know, it's quite intimate, right? The way she sings it, Billie Eilish sings quite intimate. She's like she's in your headphones or in the room. There's not a lot of vocals up close. It's quite staccatoed. quite breathy, and there's 5-part harmonies actually. Now, whether she actually sang the 5-part harmonies or she just auto-tuned them or not, or her brother, whatever, her brother Phineas, I think he's called, does the production, and a brilliant job. I think it was amazing. So what I had to do was recreate that. So I did this the hard way. I actually sang these harmonies, these 5-part harmonies in. Took a lot of time to work them out because actually they're actually quite subtle. And sometimes when I solo some of these out and you listen to them individually, they sound awful. Which sometimes parts do, like, and this is interesting because a lot of people say to me sometimes, like, how do you get that tone? What do you dial in and how do you set it up? And, for me, I don't really tend to think like that. It's the same with the guitar. I tend to, because like one tone, right? Like just on its own, if a guitar tone or whatever it is can sound brilliant, isolated, just on its own, it's great, right? You put it in a mix and it can sound awful, like just doesn't fit. So the way I think is like what fits for the track in context of everything else. And that's what these vocals do. They work in context, all right? But if I sort of solo some of these out and you listen to them, you'd be like, oh my God, that sounds dreadful. But when you listen to it back in context, they just work. All right, so that's something to think about. Don't ever get into the habit of soloing them and getting too hung up about how they sound individually, because quite often they'll be the wrong sound. So I sang these all in, got them roughly there. Then I used some auto-tune to get them on pitch. And I did this with... I've since got Antares, which is great. The Antares suite, vocal suite, which is amazing, and I'm using that going forward. This, I didn't have that, so I used the sort of default Reaper auto-tune, which is okay, but it's not great. And I had to sort of spend a lot of time on these and chop them up, because it's very rhythmical. In fact, I think probably these were sung in by Billie, but probably then played and quantized when Phineas was producing it. He probably actually just hit a MIDI key and said, that's where I want that note to be, and that's where I want that note to be, and there's ways of doing that in software. I didn't do that for this. I did it the hard way, which was kind of good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the pain. But you can see there, I put them all on the beat and stuff, chop them up, put all these different things on the beat. If we just listen to these, solo these. You see what I mean, right? If you listen to that on its own, it's like, what is going on? You know what I mean? Doesn't sound great, does it? Right? If I bring in, because those are like the harmonies. If I bring in the main vocal, that changes it. Why should now red my blood to no sleeping? You're on your tippy toes creeping around like no one knows that you're so green. So you can see it's sort of starting off with 3 harmonies to begin with. There's the main vocal. I'll just do the main vocal to begin with, right? Why should now red my blood to no sleeping? Right, and then I'll bring in the harmonies here. Why should now red my blood? But like some of these, if I just solo the harmonies. Why should now red my blood to no sleeping? You're on your tippy toes creeping around like right? Yeah, they sound quite odd on their own. But if you put them in context, they're banging, man. Why should now right? Red my blood to no sleeping? And it goes up to 4 or 5 parts up here. Like, so they're layered and layered and layered. Let's go to the second verse here. Bruises on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you or please. I do what I want when I'm wanting to. My soul so cynical. Right, but like in context, let's take them all out. So we've got the whole band. Have we got the whole band? Where's the whole band? There's the whole band. Bruises on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you or please. I do what I want when I want So, you know, like, they work, right? That's the thing. And that's the way you got to think about it. Think of the whole. In terms of what I did with processing, I'll call one of these up. You can see most of these, I put some auto-tune on. I tried auto pitch correction, which worked reasonably well for most of it. And I put a compressor on every channel of these vocals. Some of them I put on more processing. For example, this one here has got a tuner, auto-tune. It's got EQ on it. It's got an extra thing, which is another pitch correction tool, and then an effect. This effect is like a slapback, which I believe is, which is this 46. This is this one, solo, that one. Bruises on both my knees, but you don't say. See, that's without. That's the slapback. Nice. Right. Let's go back again. Nice. So that's what I was doing with that, the vocals there. You know, and like I said, I'm not going to get into masses and masses amount of detail about all this here. I mean, I could spend days talking about exactly what I did. But what I want to stress here is I spent a lot of time on these vocals to get these to sit in the mix right. And some of these harmonies are really low in the mix. They're just subtle. You know, can you hear the high one? Let me solo it. Not that one. Right? You can hear it in the mix here. You might be able to now. I've highlighted it. Let's play it a few bars before. Really subtle, right? But it makes a massive difference, all those things. So that was what I was trying to get across is, you know, there's like a staggering amount of tracks, but some things are so subtle, but they make a huge difference, I think. It's that kind of attention to detail that I like. And simplicity. I think simplicity is important. I don't like being overly complex with a lot of the content. I do like minimalism, or it to sound like it's minimal, but it's not, because there's lots of stuff in there to make it like that. So that's the majority of stuff, you know, like, I'll talk about mastering in a minute. And as I said, on most of these buses have had some compression stuff. This is the verse vocals. We've just been listening to the verse vocals, and you can see I've got quite a bit of stuff on that bus for all the vocals going through these processors here. Right, a little bit of reverb. There, I've got this effect here. Supercharges is like a sort of character compressor. There's some EQ. You see I got all of the bottom end rolled off after below 121 hertz. There's no bottom end. Again, allowing room for the bass, for the kick drum, and also then the basses and the sub, allowing room there. So taking everything, all the vocals, taking all that information away. There's another compressor on there. There's a bus compressor there. And also I've got a transient master here. Just to get those transients bubbling away, which is nice. So yeah, there you go. There's a shitload of stuff there. Excuse my French. What else did I do? What have we got here? I think that's mostly the track. I'll talk about mastering in a minute, just after I talk about the outro. So the outro, yeah, this is the outro where she goes into this other kind of like dark, weird thing. If you look at the video, this is like, this is really funny video. You know, like, I've got all the band on my back and I'm doing press ups. You know, it's all green screen, but it's a lot of fun. But it's I pretty much emulated what the original track does with that. There's like a sub. You know, there's that stuff. There's these hats. There's that kind of snare, electronic snare. Right, and I got these so I sang these in. I think it's a synth on the original, but I sang them. Right, if you listen to them in. That, again, subtle. They're not massively loud in the mix, but they really add to it. And there's also this little kind of, this is a laugh down here, I think, this. But again, in the mix. Subtle, right? Cool. Then the verse, the vocals. All that stuff. I guess I'm pretty glad you said she's scared of me. And these are sort of harmonized. I don't see what she sees, but maybe it's because I'm wearing your cologne. I'm the bad guy. Some additional percussion comes in here. Right. I'm the bad guy. So yeah, some bits and bobs there. So cool, that's about it for the mix. You know, that's like what I wanted to take you through, just to show how complex it actually is. That leaves me to mastering. Now, if I just play this without my mastering plugins, right? So, perhaps let's do the chorus. And what I'm going to do is switch the master effects on halfway through this, right? Zoom in here a bit. All right, so I'll flip it in after a few bars. Watch this when I switch this in. Check out the sound then. I'll do it for this second section, right? Now. I'm the bad type, make your mama sad type, right? Make you go from that type, might suit you shit that type. I mean, that's insane, right? The difference that mastering will make is insane. Again, off. On. Just brings everything together and it's like big and kicking ass, right? So what I used for mastering was a few plugins here. This is just a tool I use to check out different information left and right and stuff. I can flip it into mono. And I've also got a basic EQ here that I can do some basic stuff on. This is a brilliant plugin, this Frontier D16 thing. And then I've got a Spectral Analyzer in here. It just allows me to see what's going on with the audio spectrum. So reasonably flat. And this, if I take off this plugin, check out the difference. And on. I mean, that's such a cool plugin. And you know what you're trying to aim for here is to get a thick, big, punchy sound, because you know with mastering we're all in the, what do I want to say? We're all in the rat race of trying to make our production sound as chunky and as thick and warm and lush and big and beefy as the next guys, right? Because if you don't, and it comes on, it doesn't sound like interesting. It doesn't make a statement. It doesn't grab your attention. Now that, don't get me wrong, there's a whole kind of argument about over mastering and essentially producing sort of chunky square waves and having things too hot. I get that. There's a whole argument there, and I do not, in any stretch of imagination, claim to be a mastering engineer, nor will I ever will. I just know what sounds good to my ears, and I know for my target audience for this one, it's going to work. And I had a lot of great comments on it. So my advice with it is to always have reference tracks when you get to the mastering stage. You know, just always try and have a reference track that you can compare it to. I compared mine a little bit to the original, but I also used other reference tracks that I like the sound of, not just the original Billie Eilish one, because Billie Eilish track does sound very different. It's the same song and it's got the same elements, but it's very different mix and a different energy level, different mood, which suits the video that I was making. But I'm happy with the way it sounds. And like I say, if you go a little along to the other YouTube channel I've got, click play or pop on a Spotify. I'll put these links in the description as well. Play it. You'll see and turn it up. You know, you'll hear it really does thunder away. It's great. I've had a lot of great comments on the bottom end and the bass, which I'm really happy with. I spent a lot of time on that. And that's a combination of meticulous detail in soundscaping those instruments, and then also thinking about the mastering side of it, which is what we're looking at here. So there we go. That's just to run through really quick. I did it as quickly as I could. That's the bad guy thing. If you like this, please do give me a like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If there's anything I can go over, anything that you just leaves you like, what is he talking about? Or if I didn't go into enough detail and you want me to do some more, let me know and I'll try and tackle it. I do like sharing, giving back. It's great. More to come, lots more to come. I think the next one I'll probably do of these will be Poker Face by Lady Gaga, because that's another tune I've just done a cover of, which is getting distributed now through all the online streaming services, and I'm in the process of making a video. I'm about to go and put the green screen up now and start shooting for that. Let me know. Subscribe to both channels, please. Do subscribe to this one for the tutorials, but also please do subscribe to the other one, which is Charlie Diamond Music Productions. Subscribe to that, which is where it's just going to be music videos. The reason I'm doing that is because that will appeal to lots and lots of people, not like you. You're a geek, you're a nerd, you like this stuff, as do I. But just the music stuff and the performances will appeal to different people, as well as you, hopefully. That's why they're on different channels. Thanks very much for your attention. Do subscribe, do like it, and give it a share if you like it, all right? Pop back often. Let me know. Give me some comment. I love it. This channel's for you guys. Take care. All the best for now.